Hello, my darlings. Today I am going to start a series. The title is Who Goes There by John W. Campbell. Copyright 1938. It's public domain with an expired copyright. And this, my darling listeners, is the story that launched Redacted. Oh, you will have to guess, my dears. Chapter 1. The place stank, a queer mingled stench that only the ice-buried cabins of an Antarctic camp know. Compounds of reeking human sweat, and the heavy fish oil stench of melted seal blubber, an overtone of liniment combat, the musty smell of sweat and snow-drenched furs, the acrid odor of burnt cooking fat, and the animal, not unpleasant smell of dogs diluted by time hung in the air. Lingering odors of machine oil contrasted sharply with the taint of harness, dressing, and leather. Yet somehow, through all that reek of human beings and their associates, dogs, machines, and cooking, came another taint. It was a queer, neck-ruffling thing, a faintest suggestion of an odor alien among the smells of industry and life. And it was a life smell, but it came from the thing that lay bound with cords and tarpaulins on the table, dripping slowly, methodically onto the heavy planks, dank and gaunt under the unshielding glare of the electric light. Blair, the little bald-pated biologist of the expedition, twitched nervously at the wrappings, exposing clear, dark ice beneath, and then pulling the tarpaulin back into place restlessly. His little bird-like motions of suppressed eagerness danced his shadow across the fringe of the dingy gray underwear hanging from the low ceiling, and the equatorial fringe of stiff, graying hair around his naked skull, a comical halo about the shadow's head. Commander Gary brushed aside the lax legs of a suit of underwear and stepped towards the table. Slowly his eyes traced around the rings of men sardined into the administrative building, his tall, stiff body straightening finally, and he nodded. 37. All here. His voice was low, yet carried the clear authority of the commander by nature, as well as by title. You know the outline of the story back of the find of the secondary pole expedition? I have been conferring with second-in-command Macready and Norris, as well as Blair and Dr. Copper. There's a difference in opinion, and because it involves the entire group, it is only just that the entire expedition personnel act on it. I'm going to ask Macready to give you the details of the story because each of you have been too busy with his own work to follow closely the endeavors of others. Macready? Moving from the smoke-blued background, Macready was a figure from some forgotten myth, a looming bronze statue that held life and walked. 6 feet 4 inches, he stood as he halted beside the table, and with a characteristic glance upward to ensure himself of room under the lower ceiling beam, straightened. His rough, clashingly orange, windproof jacket he still had on, yet on his huge frame it did not seem misplaced. Even here, 4 feet beneath the driftwind that droned across the Antarctic waste above the ceiling, the cold of the frozen continent leaked in and gave meaning to the harshness of man. And he was bronze, and his great red bronze beard, the heavy hair that matched it, the gnarled, corded hands gripping, relaxing on the table plates were bronze. Even the deep sunken eyes beneath heavy brows were bronzed. Age-resisting endurance of the metal spoke in the craggy, heavy outline of his face, and the mellow tones of the heavy voice. Norris and Blair agree on one thing. That animal we found was not terrestrial in origin. Norris fears there may be danger in that. Blair says there's none. But I'll go back to how and why we found it. To all that was known before we came here, it appeared that this point was exactly over the south magnetic pole of Earth. The compass does point straight down here, as you all know. The more delicate instruments of the physicists, instruments especially designed for this expedition and its study of the magnetic pole, detected a secondary effect. A secondary, less powerful magnetic influence about 80 miles southwest of here. The secondary magnetic expedition went out to investigate it. There's no need for details. We found it. But it was not the huge meteorite or magnetic mountain Norris had expected to find. Iron ore is magnetic, of course. Iron more so. And certain special steels even more magnetic from the surface indications. The small secondary pole we found was small, so small that the magnetic effect it had was preposterous. No magnetic material conceivable could have had that effect. Sounding through the ice indicated it was in with 100 feet of the glacier surface. I think you should know the structure of the place. There's a broad plateau, a level sweep that runs more than 150 miles due south from the secondary station, Van Wall said. He didn't have time or fuel to fly farther, but it was running smoothly due south then. Right there, where the buried thing was, there is an ice-drowned mountain ridge, a granite wall of unshakable strength that has dammed back the ice creeping from the south. And 400 miles due south is the South Pole Plateau. You've asked me at various times why it gets warmer here when the wind rises, and most of you know. As a meteorologist, I'd have staked my word that no wind could blow at minus 70 degrees, and no more than at 5-mile winds could blow at negative 50 without causing warming due to friction with ground, snow, ice, and the air itself. We camped there on the lip of that ice-drowned mountain range for 12 days. We dug out camp into the blue ice that formed the surface and escaped most of it. But for 12 consecutive days, the wind blew at 45 miles an hour, and it went as high as 48 and fell at 41 at times. The temperature was negative 63 degrees. It rose to negative 60 and fell to negative 68. It was meteorologically impossible, and it went on uninterruptedly for 12 days and 12 nights. Somewhere to the south, the frozen air of the South Pole Plateau slides down from that 18,000-foot bowl, down a mountain pass, over a glacier, and starts north. There must be a funneling mountain chain that directs it and sweeps it away for 400 miles to hit that bald plateau where we found the secondary pole, and 350 miles north reaches the Antarctic Ocean. It's been frozen there since Antarctica froze 20 million years ago. There's never been a thaw here. 20 million years ago, Antarctica was beginning to freeze. We've investigated, thought, and built speculations. What we believed happened was about this. Something came down out of space. A ship. We saw it there in the blue ice. A thing like a submarine without a conning tower or directive vanes. 280 feet long and 40 feet in diameter at its thickest. A Van Wall. Space? Yes, but I'll explain that better later. McCready's steady voice went on. It came down from space, driven and lifted by forces men haven't discovered yet. And somehow, perhaps, something went wrong then. It tangled with Earth's magnetic field. It came south here out of control, probably circling the magnetic pole. That's a savage country there, but when Antarctica was still freezing, it must have been 1,000 times more savage. There must have been blizzard, snow, as well as drift. New snowfalls as the continent glaciated. The swirling there must have been particularly bad. The wind hurling a solid blanket of white over the lip of that now-buried mountain. The ship struck solid granite head-on and cracked up. Not everyone of the passengers in it was killed, but the ship must have been ruined. Her driving mechanism locked. It tangled with Earth's field, Norris believes. No thing made by intelligent beings can tangle with the dead immensity of a planet's natural forces and survive. One of the passengers stepped out. The wind we saw there never fell below 41, and the temperature never rose above -60. Then the wind must have been stronger, and there was a drift falling in a solid sheet. The thing was lost completely in 10 paces. He paused for a moment, the deep, steady voice giving way to the drone of wind overhead, and the uneasy, malicious gurgling in the pipe of the galley stove. Drift. A drift wind was sweeping by overhead. Right now the snow picked up by the mumbling wind fled in level, blinding lines across the face of the buried camp. If a man stepped out of the tunnels that had connected each of the camp's buildings beneath the surface, he'd be lost in 10 paces. Out there, the slim, black finger of the radio mast lifted 300 feet in the air. And at its peak was the clear night sky, a sky of thin, whining wind rushing steadily from beyond to another, beyond under the licking, curling mantle of the aurora. And off north, the horizon flamed with queer, angry colors of the midnight twilight. That was spring, 300 feet above Antarctica. At the surface, it was white death. Death of a needle-fingered cold driven before the wind, sucking heat from any warm thing, cold and white mist of the endless, everlasting drift, the fine, fine particles of licking snow that obscured all things. Kiner, the little scar-faced cook, winced. 5 days ago he had stepped out to the surface to reach a cache of frozen beef. He had reached it, started back, and the drift wind leapt out of the south. Cold, white death that streamed along the ground, blinding him in 20 seconds. He stumbled on wildly in circles. It was half an hour before rope-guided men from below found him in the impenetrable murk. It was easy for man or thing to get lost at 10 paces, and the drift wind then was probably more impenetrable than we know. McGreedy's voice snapped Kinner's mind back to welcome dank warmth of the ad building. The passenger of the ship wasn't prepared either, it appears. It froze within 10 feet of the ship. We dug down to find the ship, and our tunnel happened to find the frozen animal. Barclay's ice axe struck its skull. When we saw what it was, Barclay went back to the tractor, started the fire up, and when the steam pressure built, sent a call for Blair and Dr. Cooper. Barclay himself was sick then, stayed sick for 3 days, as a matter of fact. When Blair and Copper came, we cut out the animal in a block of ice. As you see, wrapped it and loaded it on the tractor for return here. We wanted to get into that ship. We reached the side and found the metal was something we didn't know. Our beryllium bronze, non-magnetic tools wouldn't touch it. Barclay had some tool steel on the tractor, and that wouldn't scratch it either. We made reasonable tests, even tried some acid from the batteries with no results. They must have had a passivating process to take magnesium metal resist acid that way, and the alloy must have been at least 95% magnesium, but we had no way of guessing that. So when we spotted the barely open, locked door, we cut around it. There was clear, hard ice inside the lock, where we couldn't reach it. Through the little crack, we could look in and see that only metal and tools were in there. So we decided to loosen the ice with a bomb. We had decanite, bombs, and thermite. Thermite is the ice softener. Decanite might have shattered valuable things, where the thermite's heat would just loosen the ice. Dr. Cooper, Norris, and I placed a 25-pound thermite bomb, wired it, and took the connector up the tunnel to the surface, where Blair had the steam tractor waiting. 100 yards the other side of that granite wall, we set off the thermite bomb. The magnesium metal of the ship caught, of course. The glow of the bomb flared and died. Then it began to flare again. We ran back to the tractor, and gradually the glare built up. From where we were, we could see the whole ice field illuminated from beneath with an unbearable light. The ship's shadow was a great dark cone reaching off towards the north, where the twilight was just about gone. For a moment it lasted, and we counted 3 other shadow things that might have been other passengers frozen there. Then the ice was crashing down and against the ship. That's why I told you about that place. The wind sweeping down from the pole was at our backs. Steam and hydrogen flame were torn away in white ice fog, and the flaming heat under the ice there was yanked away towards the Antarctic Ocean before it touched us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have come back, even with the shelter of that granite ridge that stopped the light. Somehow in the blinding inferno, we could see great hunched things, black bulks glowing even so. They shed even the furious incantation of the magnesium for a time. Those must have been the engines, we knew. Secrets going in blazing glory, secrets that might have given man the planets. Mysterious things that could lift and hurl that ship had soaked in the force of the Earth's magnetic field. I saw Morris's mouth move and ducked. I couldn't hear him. Insulation something gave way. All Earth's fields they'd soaked up 20 million years before broke loose. The aurora in the sky looked down, and the whole plateau there was bathed in cold fire that blanketed vision. An ice axe in my hand got red hot and hissed on the metal. Metal buttons on my clothes burned into me, and a flash of electric blue seared upward from beyond the granite wall. Then the walls of ice crashed down on it. For an instant it squealed the way dry ice does when it's pressed between metal. We were blind and groping in the dark for hours while our eyes recovered. We found every coil within a mile was fused rubbish. The dynamo and every radio set, the earphones and speakers. If we hadn't had the steam tractor, we couldn't have gotten over to the second camp. Van Wall flew in from Big Magnet at sunup, as you know. We came home as soon as possible. That's the history of that. McGreedy's great bronze beard gestured towards the thing on the table. So quote. That's right, then. My darlings, I'm sure there's enough clues there that you can guess which movie this inspired, should we say. Tell me what you think it is in the comments if you haven't already guessed. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.